Friends and family, welcome and thank you for being here today to celebrate the life of Annie Louise Ferraloro. I would like to express my sincerest sympathies to Annie's family, her son Roberto and his wife Liz, her daughter Manuela and her partner Chris, her grandchildren Jody, Ella and her partner Nick, Michael and his wife Samantha, Luke, Troy and Caleb, and her great-grandchildren Oscar and Harper. My name is Zena Lithgow and I am the civil celebrant who will be performing today's funeral ceremony. This will be with the assistance of Jenny Munro of Bell Funeral Services, who has organised today's service. The music you heard as you arrived was by the Flaming Lips. The song was named Do You Realise? This is a band her then teenage granddaughter Jody introduced Annie to in 2004. Annie continued to listen to their albums and enjoy playing their music from then on. This is much younger music than most people would expect Annie to have adored, but that's the type of woman Annie was. Annie Louise Smith was born in 1931 in Bendigo Base Hospital. She was the third and final child of Frank and Betty Smith. She enjoyed a happy childhood, living on the family farm 10 kilometres out of Bendigo. She enjoyed helping her mother in the kitchen and also tending to her farm duties, feeding the animals. When Annie turned 16, she left school to pursue a career as a receptionist. She spent 2 years working for a local law firm called Clark and Barwood, before taking a job offer from her employer, John Clark, when he and his family relocated to Carlton. This is where she met her future husband, Alberto Ferraloro, at the tender age of 19. Alberto and Annie were smitten from their first meeting at a local dance. Annie used to tell her grandchildren that she was so smitten from the first time he asked her to dance. He was a European gentleman, unlike any of the farm boys she had grown up with. In 1952, Annie and Alberto married. They lived with Alberto's family for 2 years, whilst they saved up money for their first home, a beautiful miner's cottage in Faraday Street, Carlton. This is where they raised their 2 beautiful children, Roberto and Manuela. In 1990, she retired from her long career as a law receptionist to spend time with Albie and be an available grandparent to her grandchildren. She assisted with both Rob and Liz and Manuela and Chris with the childcare duties to enable them to work. This was a very special time and friendship for her to develop with her grandchildren, and she was always very fortunate of that. In 2002, when Albie was diagnosed with bowel cancer, Annie did what she did best. She adapted to being his carer with gusto. Albie had never been better fed. Annie diligently cared for Albie until he lost his battle with cancer in 2005. To fill the void, Annie's family rallied around her, visiting her often and encouraging her to take up hobbies. Around this time, Annie became a committed member of the CWA and took great pride in organising fundraisers for the organisation. In 2012, Annie made the choice to move into an aged care facility in Carlton, selling the home she and Albie had raised their children and spent much time with their grandchildren in. She was growing weary of the task of maintaining the large garden. She could no longer keep up the energy and enthusiasm that she manifested for every aspect of her life. This was after a small cancer scare in 2010, which did slow Annie down a little, though only marginally. For her, staying young meant staying active. This life philosophy served her well. The family recollects she was still physically well and mentally astute right up until the last few weeks of her life. On the 1st of May 2014, Annie passed away quietly and contently. There was no pain to speak of. She simply fell into a deep slumber and went to be with her Albie. Her family takes great comfort in the graceful manner she left us. Annie was the much-loved matriarch of this family. She was a nurturer. She loved cooking and entertaining, drinking pots of tea, knitting, Sudoku puzzles, and most importantly, having her family around her. She had an endless array of hats, which she took great pride in keeping in pristine condition. She took them out of the hat box just as she left the house and returned them to their hat boxes as soon as she came home. Her grandchildren fondly recall their grandma as hip, open-minded, and interested in them as unique individuals. She thrilled each of them by taking them each on a one-on-one overseas trip with her. After her husband Albie passed away, Annie was still a keen traveller and saw these trips as an opportunity to get to know each of her grandchildren as individual personalities. She called the experiences an invigorating paddle in the fountain of youth. Family was always Annie's number one priority. After family, it was food. Marrying into Alberto's Italian migrant family, Annie adapted to their culture and